Yeah.
Hold on. Tell me one more time. All right, it's starting. All right. So, こんにちは. Thanks for finding us. We are
MC.
FM. Yay. Thank you. All right. So today's guest is Princess, and my name is MC Kuni, and MC as in moto 中学生. What it means is moto is former, and then 中学生 is middle schooler. And I went to middle school in Japan, so I would like to call myself Kuni as a middle schooler, hence MC Kuni. And in this place, I get to invite my friends who are also middle schoolers, and they went to middle school in the US. So, FM, they are, right? So here's MC Kuni, yay, and here's FM. Princess, thank you so much for being open for this project. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Princess, I have questions.
Okay.
Because we get to talk about our middle school time. Okay. So, as you reflect meaning just look back. What kind of adjectives pop up when you think of your middle school years?
For me, middle school was kind of confusing.
Confusing.
Confusing. Right? A time of exploration. So exploration. I think of new. It felt very new. I felt like it was a time. I know these are not adjectives, but there are lots of feelings. It was a time where I started to get to know myself.
You were saying confusing. When you said confusing, you said confusing, smiling. But was it confusing, fun confusing, or confusing what is going on?
So all of the ways it could be confusing, it was confusing. So I was in Rhode Island for middle school.
Got it.
And Rhode Island's a very small state. Providence is an even smaller city, which is where I'm from.
Yeah.
And it's a place where everyone really does know everyone. It was very common to go to school with your neighbors or to know an entire family just from one instance of meeting them, because people were just very connected. And so when I was in elementary school, I went to a very small elementary school.
Right.
There were maybe 12 or 13 classrooms in the building.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from an environment where I knew everyone, and I went to school in the neighborhood that I lived in.
Mm-hmm.
But when I transitioned to middle school, my neighborhood middle school was at capacity. So I couldn't go to school in the neighborhood I lived in.
I see.
And so I went to a new area of town where there were all new people. No one from my elementary school went to my middle school. So I didn't know anybody. And I was in a part of the city that I was not familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So it was confusing because I didn't know where I was physically located. I didn't know the area. And then I didn't know any of the people or things about the community. It was all very new. And I had to figure out who I was and who I wanted to be in spaces where I knew no one. So it was a definitely a challenging experience. I work very well with like having close community. And it's not always been easy for me to make friends. And so it was tough.
Right. So you didn't know anyone, and then confusing. Still in Providence, though.
Yes. Yes, still in Providence.
But still. And then did you get to walk?
No, I took the school bus. So this was also an experience that I hadn't had. Well, I shouldn't say I've never had in preschool. So ages 3 to 4, I took a school bus to go to school, but I don't remember, much of that experience. I was so little.
Uh,
And so all of elementary school, I was able to walk to school. And then middle school, this was also a kind of a scary thing because taking the school bus, it's a big deal to figure out where you're going to sit on the school bus. And
Ay.
if you can make friends with people so that you have a mate to kind of, ride to school with and ride home with. And I because I've always been like a bigger person. And so the bus driver and the bus monitor were very conscious that my body takes up more space. So they wouldn't let me sit where I wanted to. I sat in the front by myself.
So,
Yeah.
so adults, this monitor person is what is this? This person is an adult who.
Yes. So they are an adult who one makes sure that everyone who's supposed to be on the bus actually gets on the bus.
Hmm.
They also, if you have to cross a street or anything like that, they stop the traffic so that you can cross the street to get on the bus. And so the monitor was the person who, uh, if there was any reason why you wouldn't sit in a certain area, they decided where you sat.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time in Providence, middle schools were very crowded. They were actually doing some things that they shouldn't have done on the bus, like having 3 people sit in one seat,
Awesome.
because there were not enough school buses to bring all of the students from the different parts of town. So they tried to make as much, space or as many people who could fit on the bus. Um, they had to make space for all those people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the monitor, I remember her name, was the person who decided where I sat on the bus.
How did you feel?
I felt kind of isolated,
Mm.
because um, I couldn't decide where I was going to be, and then I sat by myself, and I didn't have any choice in that. The only time someone sat next to me was if they were misbehaving and they were moved from their, traditional spot on the bus. They had to sit next to me, and nobody wanted to sit next to me, um, because it meant that they had less space to move around.
Mm. So how long was the commute? You wait at the corner stop near your
Hmm.
house, and then how long? What time did
The
you get picked up and then?
ooh, so our pickup time was 6:30 in the morning. Yeah, and we got to school by 7:30, and we had breakfast at the school.
So you sit for an hour.
Yes.
Hmm. And then you started, did you do that from the first day of the school?
Yes, yeah, all 3 years that I was there, I took the school bus at the same time
Mm.
to get to school. And then because school buses arrived early before the actual school day started, almost everyone who took a bus went into the cafeteria for breakfast at the school.
Any other things that made you feel confused?
Yeah, I didn't know where anything was in the building. Um, I even going through parts of town where the school bus would travel. We went to lots of parts of the city that I'd never gone to before. At least, not by myself. I did a lot of things with like my mom. My dad was the person who drove frequently in our family. And so like I would go and do the things that they did. But so learning new parts of the city, learning new people, figuring out where my classes were. Middle school was the first time where my each class, like each individual subject was in a different room.
Mm.
So learning where everything was, learning where the bathrooms were, all of those things were confusing. And I went from an elementary school that was maybe 300 people to a middle school that was about 2,000 people.
Yeah. You also said that you explored, you felt, and then, it was new, and also get to know myself kind of stage.
Mhm.
How did you, confusing is very stressful, sounds like.
Yes.
Actually, you're confused, it's stressful, but it's how did you turn those into get to know myself to, ooh, this is my new experience, to,
Mhm.
ooh, this is to explore.
Mhm. So, in elementary school, so particularly like during that transition time of moving from elementary to middle, um, when I was in elementary school, I was not cool.
What do you mean?
I know, it's surprising. I think I'm pretty cool now.
What do you mean
Um,
though?
yeah, so I didn't have a lot of friends. I knew people from my neighborhood, but I didn't have close friends. And in some situations, I was bullied also in elementary school. And so I thought that middle school would be a great time to reinvent myself and for people to really get to know who I really am and to see me as not the person who didn't have a lot of friends or I spent a lot of time reading when I was yeah, I always loved, learning and I stayed to myself a lot because it was hard for me to make friends.
Mm,
And so I was like, oh, this will be a great experience for me to show people who I really am. And so it was also kind of liberating because no one knew that I was not popular in middle school um, because I was new to all of these people and they were all new to me. And so I got to explore the things that I really liked, and I didn't have to pretend to like things because other people liked them. I was able to try new things that trying out for like the dance team or we had step dance and those sorts of things. So I was able to try out for things and meet different people um, who were also trying to figure out who they were too. And so it was really nice to be able to connect with people in that way. And I also came from a family that was, kind of strict. And
mm,
so this was the first kind of like little bit of freedom that I had because I wasn't going to school around the corner. So it wasn't like my mom or my dad was going to pop up at school and see what was happening or any of those sorts of things. I had some freedom to try do new things and uh, meet new people and just learn new things too.
wow. And how did it go that I'm gonna explore? I'm
It
gonna
went
get to
pretty,
know myself. How did it go?
yeah, it went pretty well. I think that I still, still in middle school, didn't have a ton of friends, but I was able to make really good friends. I was able to try out a lot of new things, connect with people in ways that I hadn't connected with people before. And I
Mm,
started to feel confident about myself. Um, I wasn't, before middle school, and middle school is also kind of a hard time too in general, because it feels like everybody's trying to figure out who they are. Um, but I started to really like who I was. And I didn't
oh,
I didn't feel that when I was even young, like when I was really young. And it
wow,
yeah.
wow. Okay, so I was gonna ask you that what helped you, going through those like confusing and I'm gonna reinvent myself. I'm gonna intentional about it. I am going to like explore this and then use this freedom and then all those excitement. And
Mhm.
then you tried and, I wanted to ask you what helped you to stay hopeful, those
Mm,
trial, oh, but you already like jumped that, that you became confident. So I'm going to change the question, like what helps you to stay hopeful
mm.
just now. But what middle school confident like yourself? What kind of event or things that you did get to the point in
Mm.
middle school? That's
Mhm.
wow.
So thinking back on it, I was like, oh wow, it does feel um I hadn't thought about these things in a long time. And so one thing that helped a lot was I made a friend. I made a really good friend who turned out to be my very best friend.
Oof.
And uh our having our friendship was something that made me feel like I felt a little bit more freedom. I felt a little bit more like, oh wow, if I'm just myself, people will really like me. And so um that having that friendship, it changed something really major for me. Um
Hold on. Tell me one more time.
yeah, or if I'm myself, then people will like people who are just themselves. And that helped me to like myself even more because if I'm just me and I'm being sometimes everybody has things that are like a little weird or a little awkward or a little funny, and if other people are seeing those things and they really like them and they like you, it kind of gave me a little permission to like myself too.
Hmm.
um yeah, and it's I hadn't felt that before.
So
I
you knew that in middle school. Or do you feel like as you look back, that's what you are?
so I knew that in middle school. And that I've always been a person to have a lot of conversations with people, and I was very close with my grandmother. And so to the point where I would talk to my grandmother after school each day, whenever things were, my parents were doing things, and I would spend a lot of time with her. And so I would often talk to her about what was happening in school. And she would say, Princess, if you're just yourself, people will like you. The people who are, good people who are open and receptive to having friends, then they're going to be open and receptive if you're just, honest about who you are. And so she kind of gave me some courage. Um, my grandmother is a big part of my of all of my schooling experiences, especially because she grew up during a time where it was not accessible for Black people to um, uh, get education easily.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was always very excited about um, school and all the possibilities that school held, especially being Black and living in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was always a big encouragement. She always gave so much encouragement, uh, just so that I could be myself and not let other people tell me what kind of person I had to be,
Oh,
that I could choose for myself who I wanted to be. These are all, big lessons from my grandmother that still
wow.
stick with me today.
And then so you actually try that out in real
Hmm.
life. Like I was trying with girls, and then you found your friend, and then you felt, you have your own, support system,
Hmm.
and then that helped you to go, hey, what grandma said works.
Yeah.
And this is how it goes, and I'm gonna continue just being myself. Is that how it goes?
Hmm. Yeah. And she always said, if someone doesn't like you, then it's their loss. They're missing out on a great person.
Wow. So is so would you say your grandma was the source of, like, something that my question was, what helped you stay hopeful? Uh,
Yes, my grandma
hopeful
was definitely,
grandmother. Anybody?
yeah.
Anything else or any other events?
So my definitely my grandmother, my friend Melissa, who was my really good friend. Um, and it's interesting because Melissa moved away at the end of seventh grade.
Oh.
And so she went to a different school in a different city. And so I ended up making like a new group of friends my eighth grade year.
Mhm.
But I felt, confident in doing that because, um, I knew that I had something to offer
Mm.
in terms of like a person to talk to be a good friend. Um, I love helping people, and so I always um, tried to just be my best self, be the
Mm.
best version of myself, and that made a difference for me. And not to say that there were not like tough situations or people who were unkind, because there were, but I felt very grounded, very stable in the messaging that I received from my grandmother and my friend. And then I had a really wonderful teacher.
Oh,
Um, uh, I had a history teacher and a math teacher. So my history teacher, Mr. Borges, was wonderful. And then I had a math teacher. I had always had difficulty with math.
oh.
And so Mr. Winook was my math teacher. He actually, maybe 2 weeks ago, he just passed away. And so, but he was
Oh,
wonderful. Like I think about him and I get very emotional
oh,
because
wow.
he believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, because I had always been a pretty good student, but I felt so unskilled with math. And he would take extra time with me, and I would stay after school, and he would help me. He would call my mom on the phone and walk her through my homework so that she could help me with my homework. He was a wonderful teacher,
Wow.
wonderful teacher.
And then you just heard that he passed too.
Yes, I'm going to cry now. Um, even after I completed sixth grade, uh, for help with math, I would ask him questions. Um, and he also, so the when I was in seventh grade, my brother began middle school, and so my brother is math genius,
Ah,
and so he also had Mr. Winook, and Mr. Winook was like, "Your brother is really good at this."
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's helpful. Did he help you?
Oh yeah, he always helped.
Oh, good.
He always helped. Yeah.
So my last question is, if you get to go back
Mm,
to your middle school, time, and then if you get to meet Princess in
mm,
sixth, seventh, or eighth grade, and then you can even pick some incident or just general. Um, what would you do to help her? What would you like to say if you get to really kind of face yourself?
hmm So I guess if I were approaching my middle school self, I would start with I'm a huge music fan.
Oh,
I collect records, I listen to lots of music. And so I would have probably started the conversation with myself around music.
mm,
Um just as an entryway, because that's something I've always loved talking about. Um and so it's interesting because a lot of the things I would say to myself are more so related to the time in my life, but not necessarily about school.
okay, that's fine.
Um,
Yeah. Keep going.
so I felt, well, I felt I had freedom in school to be myself. At home, it wasn't necessarily the case.
Mm,
And so I would, say that, um, even though your parents may want you to be something, like they have an image of who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be like, you end up being or becoming someone that is so free and beyond what you thought you could even achieve. Um, you become a person that your parents are really proud of, and you learned to get through things that are really difficult and struggles and loss in a way that not only made you stronger, but you were able to use those things to love yourself more and love the people around you more, and to be kinder to yourself and kinder to other people. You become a person who creates beautiful things, and you have such rich relationships with your community and with the people that are your family, that you were born into, and your chosen family too. And there's no limit to what you can do. You could do anything. You just have to really believe in yourself. And even when you don't believe in yourself, there are plenty of people who do believe in you.
If you start the conversation with music, what kind of music are you going to use to engage with her?
So I listened to everything.
Yeah.
At the time,
yep.
At the time I was in middle school. When I started middle school, it was 1996.
Okay.
So I was listening to a lot of hip hop and R&B. I listened to a lot of Mariah Carey.
Okay.
So and at the time Mariah Carey had just had a new album come out that was I want to say it was the Butterfly album.
Butterfly, yeah.
Yeah. And so I would probably start talking about the Butterfly album. And there were so many wonderful things, because like I didn't know at the time that Mariah Carey was like such a big hip hop fan, and there were so many samples of classic hip hop songs on the album. So like the song called "The Roof," for example, was sampled another song by a group called Mobb Deep, that was like a group of rappers that were from a pair of rappers that were from New York. And so
that's when she started really kind of collaborating, right?
Yeah, like she was working with Missy Elliott a lot. I love Missy Elliott.
Yeah.
Still love Missy Elliott. So that would probably where I would probably be where I started the conversation around that album.
Is there anything that you want to ask me? Huh?
Yes, I'm wondering about your middle school experience in Japan.
It was confusing.
Mm.
I like the bottom line, whenever I think of middle school, it's like I just didn't know whose rule was the right rule. And then that's when I started picking about, the school uniform rule. This teacher has certain rule. Parents have rule. My mother, sometimes her rule is different from father's. My friends, so fragmented, after school program, team rules, my close friends rule, and the cool students rule. I wasn't cool student, like, cool guys, like, the cool people's rule. And so I was always confused about like, who is speaking the truth? And what do I follow? And then like, what's my role? That's my, bottom line. And nobody really helped me. Oh, of course, somebody helped me. I have to mention. Do you want to know who?
Who was it?
Prince.
Yes.
Prince helped me. But I didn't follow what he was talking about right away, but that's when all the music really helped me. Lyrics helped me. Stevie Wonder's song really, when I started reading lyrics, and I thought like, can you talk about social injustice and funky and groovy? And then I was blown away. And so that's how I shifted, songs that I listened to, like less Japanese, but way more American.
For you, Prince, you had Prince. For me, Stevie Wonder.
Awesome.
Yeah, big influence in my life. Even now, as I teach at the university level, I play Stevie Wonder for my students in class.
Dude.
because there's so much
Ah.
revolution that comes from music.
Yes.
Mhm.
Innovision, the album. Innovision.
That's my favorite. That is my favorite album
I
of
got
all
really
the
hit
yes. Yes.
hard.
Living for the City. My favorite, Jesus Children of America. Such a good song, beautiful songs.
You know, I know you for so many years, but thank you for letting me learn about your middle school age. And then I just respect, and it's sort of like, aha moment, like, oh, that's how Princess has been always,
Mm.
you. And that's remarkable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
All
you
right,
so
so
much for
I'm gonna
having me.